So we are back in the games room and it's time for another collection video. So again, I have picked some hardware from the arcades that means something special to me, something along my collecting journey, and also this time I picked something that's kind of interesting, got an interesting backstory, a little bit sad to be honest with you, and also there's a lot of happiness there as well. So what do I mean by happiness? Well, this is the AtomisWave, as you know from the thumbnail. I'm not going to kid you there. And it's effectively the spiritual successor to the Neo Geo MVS, which of course you can probably tell I absolutely love that system. I know SNK did have the Neo Geo 64, but that was complete bollocks, so that doesn't really count. But this is where it all happened. This is where the 2D action happened. This is the proper spiritual successor to the MVS. So that's the good stuff. The sad part is what this system also reflects and what it kind of means as well, because this machine is actually this machine. I mean, the specs are absolutely identical. You can look them up. I'm not going to go over the technical stuff. I'm not going to bore you with that. You're quite capable to wiki all this stuff yourself, but believe me, these things are identical in every way. So yeah, this died, didn't it? This died in 2001. It had a horrible life. It was tortured. It wasn't looked after properly, wasn't supported and loved as it should have been, and it died in 2001 prematurely. And this was actually born in 2003. So this reflects, or this represents, what this should have done. You know, what this could have been and should have been. As in, should have continued having some life and some games. It should have had these spiritual successor games of SNK on it, but it didn't happen, did it? Very sad, but it is what it is. But at least we're lucky to have this system here. So of course, recently this became very popular because of the ports of some of the unreleased games currently onto the Dreamcast. You know, things like Dolphin Blue, everyone's been showing that on their videos. Before that, no one really talked about this system. Like I mentioned, it's effectively a Dreamcast, and Sammy wanted to enter the arcades in 2003. They wanted to get a sort of budget, low entry system just to do some 2D games, and this fit the bill perfectly. And the strange thing is, Sammy and Sega actually merged in 2004. So not long after, this went back to Sega, and effectively Sega were producing games for it in 2009. So you got Dreamcast hardware in the arcades in 2009. You can't write this stuff, man. So sad, so sad. Anyway, why does this mean something to me? Well, it's red, isn't it? So I love red, and so I got it because it's red. Now you have to go back to when I first got my Super Gun. So this got my Super Gun 2006. So I continued going down the route of the MVS, bought a lot more MVS carts, got some more PCBs of some of the games I played in the arcade, things like Gunsmoke and things like that. And I was having a lot of fun there, and actually moved to Singapore in 2008. And unpacked all my stuff, my PCBs, which I was paranoid they're going to break. I wrapped them up so well, got my Super Gun out, tested everything. I don't know about you guys, but when you get your stuff out of storage, you feel like a little kid that just found their toys again, and you just play the hell out of them again. It's like a new lease of life. And I was absolutely loving playing all these games after only a couple of months of being in a container. But I thought to myself, I'm in Singapore now, I'm a little bit closer to Japan. Let's get another system. It's time for another system. I deserve another system. So originally I was thinking Naomi. So as you're probably aware, Naomi is the big brother of the Dreamcast, a little bit more powerful. It outlasted the Dreamcast as well a little bit. It was after 2003 or something like that. It was still in the arcades. And I really wanted to play Ikaruga. And but I did my research. Even 2008, information a little bit sketchy. It's not so easy to get the information. So I was a bit gambling on whether to get it or not because it seemed complicated. Now it's not jammer, it's JVS. I knew you would need your own power and you have to get extra components like the Capcom converter for using the super gun because I didn't have an arcade machine. So it's a bit of a headache. You know, I've only been 2 years collecting for arcades, so I thought, why not get another jammer sort of system, stick with that, and then I'll go on to Naomi. So I decided on the AtomisWave. It's a pretty similar system. It's got all the games that I knew from the Neo Geo. Plus, there's another game as well which I was after, which was Fist of North Star. So at the time, 2008, I don't think, I could be, someone could correct me, but I don't think there was a port at that time. I think maybe it did come out the PS2, I think. But I think at the time it wasn't. And I really wanted to play this game, and I wanted the arcade version, to be honest with you. So I got that and a couple of other games. The actual shop I went for, is actually on the label here, I forget the name, because they don't exist anymore, they died, like the Dreamcast sadly, is FJ.com. So this was a fantastic shop in Tokyo. At the time, the website as well, it's not like you see today with a nice shopping cart. You effectively had a list you downloaded every couple of weeks with the updated prices and stock, and they had some amazing prices. I got Samurai Showdown 5 Perfect from them as well, dirt cheap. Oh, those were the days. And so I got the AtomisWave. I think I only paid maybe $30-40 for the machine itself. The games were pretty cheap as well. I think the Fist of North Star was a popular one. I think that one was maybe $60-70. The rest were 20, maybe even $10 each. So it was a fantastic system to collect for. The prices are slightly different now. I have no idea what the games go for, but I would highly doubt they go for that price. Fantastic system, easy to plug in and play. It's jammer, but it does have the VGA, so it's really easy to use. So that's it. So the carts are nice little square little pieces like this, really easy to plug and play, just like that. Easy, much easier than the MVS. MVS, you're constantly having to clean the edges and what have you, and reinserting it each time. This is plug it in, it works every time. And you normally get stuff like this. There's these sort of kits, very similar to the MVS or arcade PCBs, as you've probably seen before. And other thing as well, eventually I collected some of the other accessories and stuff like that. They did have a lot of stuff like gun games. I think I got about 5 or 6 gun games, to be honest with you. They did a lot of gun games, very popular in the US. You've probably seen these orange shotguns before when you've been to a pub or bar in the US. They were everywhere, extreme hunting. And it's a little bit broken, but still works. Or they had guns like this for the sports shooting game. This is just the shell, I got spare parts. They did have a modem, so they had online scores. This is the AllNet. So before they went to Sega, it was the AWNet, I think, for the SAMI system, and then AllNet is the standard Sega modem and online services. They also had a couple of driving games. They had, they tried to be quite flexible on the system. And they also had a candy cab as well, which is very similar looking to the Neo Geo 29. Kind of like it. I would always love to get one, for just because of the system I've been collecting for. I kind of feel attached to the AtomisWave. I'd love to get a candy cab of it, but they're quite difficult to get, especially in this region. So what I'm going to do is actually go over the games. I'm going to first of all cover the games, like the shooting games and drama games, because they're not easy accessible, so I'll just quickly browse over those ones, and then we'll get into the sort of like the top 10 then top 5. I'm not going to actually do a top 1 and really score them. I'm only doing a top 5 because the games, nothing really stands out as the best game. They are all pretty damn good games, and depending on the day, depending on the hour even, I could tell you a different game is my favourite. So I'm not going to do that, but at least I will give you a top 5. At the very least I can do. And there's probably 1 or 2 in there you probably expect to be in the top 5 but didn't make it. So I will give my reasons when we get there. So let's take a look at the games. So let's quickly get these specialized games out of the way. And first up is Sega Bash Fishing Challenge. And of course, this is a standard fishing game. The only thing remarkable about this one is the fact that it was released in 2009, so extremely late in the life cycle of the AtomisWave. Next up is a horsey game. It is Next Select Keeper Furlong Challenge. Just like Sega Sea Bass Fishing Challenge, it's completely unplayable without the specialized control panel. And I only really picked this up because it was very cheap, just to play around with it to see if I could get it to work, but I can't. It seems to be just like a network sort of jockey training and sort of gambling game that were very popular in Japan, but I have no idea how to play it. But the next game you can actually play, it is Animal Basket. Now this one is a really weird sort of game. I think it's probably a redemption game. It's very simple. It's a kiddies game. You just literally got to get the ball in the basket and you have animals. Nothing too complex about that one. Nothing too excited. And like I say, it's a kiddies game. You just like mashing some buttons to get it to work. Next game is also playable. It is Salaried Worker Golden Tarot. I think originally this had a trackball, but it's quite playable still with the joystick. It is basically a load of card games and board games. So you've got different types of poker or other cards games. Can't quite figure out what's going on there because of the translation. You've also got Othello and I think possibly Mahjong as well. Like I say, it's difficult to get into due to the language barrier, but it does look a lot of fun, and I wish I could pick up a little bit of Japanese to get through this one. But again, this was very cheap. I just got it because I could just try and play around with it and see what it was like. Next we move on to the racing games, and Sammy first released Maximum Speed. Now, I've not actually played directly the AtomisWave version of this game because of the controls. Obviously, I don't have a steering wheel. So I have actually played it on the Taito X3 that's been hooked up with emulation, and you can use an Xbox controller to play the game. It's not too bad. It looks very similar and feels very similar to something like Daytona, but obviously not as good. So I definitely recommend you give it a go on emulation if you can. Sammy did follow up with a sequel with a more ridiculous name, and it is Faster Than Speed. As you can probably tell by the name, it's a complete rip-off of these Need for Speed sort of games and Fast and Furious and all the rest of it, but it is a lot of fun. As you can tell from the footage, the graphics are much improved from the Maximum Speed game, and I've actually again played this one on the Taito X3, and yeah, it's kind of enjoyable. I would recommend this one over the Maximum Speed game. When I said that I don't have a steering wheel, that was not strictly true. I do actually have an Outrun set up, just a control panel and steering wheel and what have you, but it's one of these many projects I didn't get finished to do to actually hook up the AtomisWave to that setup. So it's on the back burner. One of these days I'll get around to play around with and set that up. So next we're into the gun games, and first up is Extreme Hunting. Not much to say about this one. It's not particularly an extreme game, but it is extremely common, I think especially in the States. This was absolutely everywhere there. I think they're very familiar with those orange shotguns. I think Sammy also not only had AtomisWave versions of this game, I think they had multiple ones on PCBs. I'm not a huge fan of the series, but it does exactly what you expect it to do. You just go in the forest and shoot all these furry little creatures. If you like that kind of thing, I'm sure you will absolutely love this game. Of course, we've got the follow-up game, Extreme Hunting 2. This was actually released after the merger between Sega and Sammy, hence the Sega Presents bit at the beginning of the game title there. And it's more of the same really, slightly better graphics, and the series is much improved. It's a lot more interesting than the previous game. I think you got a much bigger selection of furry animals to kill this time round, and you've got access to the Sega Ornet, the Sega sort of network for the high scores, which was quite cool at the time. So you could actually see how you're doing your high scores against other people around the States. which is quite cool. Next up, another gun game. It is Sports Shooting USA. Not much to say about this one really, apart from it came with the clear plastic handgun rather than those orangey shotguns that I showed you before. It's a target practice game based on getting scores rather than a sort of hunting simulation game. Personally, I do love shooting games, but if I have my choice, I prefer to go for more fun sort of point-blanky target practice games rather than like this, or more extreme games like Operation Wolf or Rambo, something like that, which you'll see in the next game is more on that sort of type of game. And the game in question is Ranger Mission. Now this is a SAMI game, and I definitely get the vibe of Ghost Squad here. It's a really good shooting game. It's more my kind of gun game, to be honest with you. But definitely similarities to Ghost Squad are definitely there in the style. Not as good graphics, not as good gameplay, but maybe it's the prequel to Ghost Squad, I don't know. SAMI did become Sega, so it could be, or I could be talking complete bollocks. Who knows? I should do some research really, shouldn't I? But yeah, this is definitely a good game, and I definitely recommend this one. One thing got to note, if you're trying this at home to hook up the SAMI guns, well, you need a SAMI I/O board. It's a little tiny PCB thing to hook up the guns to before hooking up to the actual AtomisWave motherboard itself. It's relatively easy to set up and they're quite easy to find, but just remember you've got to pick that up. Next up is not a gun game, and it is Devilish Fist. Try and saying that one with a skinful. Now we're definitely into the playable games territory here, and I've got about 7 of these before we hit the top 5. So I've done it in a kind of a weird way. So like I mentioned, I'll tell you when we get into top 5 territory, but the next 7 are damn good games nevertheless, but they weren't quite good enough to make it to top 5. So this is a brawler by Sammy Dimps. It's one of the early games released, and it's quite a common one. This is actually one game that I picked up when I first got the motherboard way back in 2008, so that would have only been about 5 years old when I actually got this game. It's quite interesting. I do like the graphics. It's very detailed. And I do like the character design. I do like the moody little intro they just had before, but unfortunately where it's let down is a little bit on the playability side, and it is a little bit repetitive. What makes it stand out a little bit is the sheer volume of stuff you can actually pick up, and you've got a super move as well, which is quite cool. Once you get your blue meter up to max, you can press 3 buttons and you can go absolutely ape and destroy everyone on the screen by tapping the attack button. It's really good fun. I do like that part. As you can see, this is nowhere near my top 5, but it's still extremely playable and enjoyable game for what it is. And if you had this back in the day on your Dreamcast, you wouldn't have been disappointed. In fact, I think it probably would have sold okay. And in fact, you can get it today for your Dreamcast. I'm sure if they're selling Dolphin Blue, you can pick up this one too. No idea how much they're charging, but if you can get it on the cheap, definitely give it a go and play a little bit of Dreamcast and think back to what could have been. SNK weren't the only ones to partner with Sammy. IGS got in on the act as well, and they released a Knights of Valor game with the 7 spirits. So if you don't know IGS, they also had something very similar to the MBS, the PGM, and they had loads of these Knights of Valor games on it, and they pumped out one on the AtomisWave. Have to admit, I do like the Knights of Valor series. Now, if you're not familiar with it, it's very similar to a sort of Capcom 90s brawler, but it has a slight element of RPG in there, as in you've got different characters with different strengths and weaknesses, which you slowly level up with experience, and you also pick up elements and items to build up your magic for your magic attacks. It's a lot of fun, and the graphics on the AtomisWave are quite spectacular, to be honest with you. It's one game that would have been fantastic on your Dreamcast. Such a shame that it wasn't released on it. So next up we got our first fighting game, and it is Guilty Gear Zuka by, of course, our good friends from Arc System Works. There's actually two Guilty Gear games on the AtomisWave. The other one is Guilty Gear 1.5. I do not have that one. That's extremely expensive now. It completely eluded me, but I'm not too fussed. I've got this one, and I have to admit it's not the greatest of the Guilty Gear series. I'm a big fan of the Guilty Gear series, but this one is not one of the better ones. Everything you love about the Guilty Gear games is there in this one. Now the soundtrack is absolutely killer. The characters, of course, are always interesting and colourful, but unfortunately they were trying to be a bit clever. They decided to go for this turnaround button, which is a complete disaster in my book. On face value, this concept should actually work. The idea is you've got two planes of attack depending on which way you're facing, but in reality it's just confusing and a complete mess. In fact, it almost put me off the whole series. So actually this is one of the first games I got in 2008, so it's actually the first time I actually played a Guilty Gear game, and almost put me off the series. Luckily I played the Naomi version, and that put me back on track and made me fall in love with the series. But yeah, this one's not pleasant. I do still recommend you try this one out just because it is different. They tried to do something different, so you've got to give them respect for that. You can play it on the PS2, and also there's a release on the Xbox, the OG Xbox in Japan, that you can try out. Sticking with fighting games, Sammy Dimps have got a series, and it is the Rumblefish. So this is the first one in this series, and it's also one of the first games that I picked up for the system. Again, it's quite a common one, and it's quite a good one too. I do enjoy this fighting series. I do like the character design, I do like the backdrops, the stages, but when it comes to playability, it's not quite as good as other fighters out there. This game is all about your combos, building up your combos and building up your gauge, of which there's actually two gauges. There's one for defense and there's also one for your attack. I don't know if it's me or maybe I'm just not that good at this game, but it is more difficult to get into, and I find myself sort of pushing the opponent into the corner and sort of powering them there and hammering them in the corner. I don't know if that's a sign of a bad game or is a sign of a bad player, I'm not sure. But still, it's a lot of fun. I do have a lot of fun playing this game, and it is one that I go back time and time. It is available on the PS2, so if you want to play it you can get it there, and I recommend you do so as well. Next up, of course, we have the sequel, Rumblefish 2. By this time it was after the merger with Sammy and Sega, so it is by Sega and Dimps this time round. They have definitely improved on the first game. One of the big weaknesses of Rumblefish was the fact that the roster was very, very limited, a little bit small. And now they've added, I think there's 4 characters now, and some of them are quite interesting, like Bazoo. He's quite a cool character to pick now. But graphically they did improve it as well, but the stages are still the same, just graphically improved. Gameplay wise, they did tweak it a little bit. It's slightly more balanced now, and as you can see, the offense and defense is now tiered. And I'm not sure exactly how the tiering work, but I just believe that depending on your character, it will sort of respond differently. Once you hit the different tiers, you can do different, slightly different moves. There's also a boost as well that you can get, that you sort of end up in a powered state. Unfortunately, this one did not come to the home consoles, unlike the first one, and it also got re-released in the arcades on the Nessica Live system, so you can play it there as well if you like. But I'm sure you can get one of these ports to the Dreamcast that have now become available, and it's well worth picking up if you like your fighting games. Give it a go if it's not too expensive. But again, it's such a shame that these games were never released on the Dreamcast back in the day. A real shame. Next we got our first SNK entry, and it's the King of Fighters NeoWave. As you can probably tell by the quality of the games coming up now, we are getting really close to our top 5. Unfortunately, this one doesn't quite make it. It is a dream match. It is really basically just 2002 King of Fighters. I think it's the first SNK game they released on this platform, and I've got a feeling that because it's a year before King of Fighters 11, they were just testing out the system and playing around with the AtomisWave before they actually brought out their proper release. I couldn't quite put it in the top 5 because it's not really adding much and it's not really bringing much new to the table here. It's 2002 just souped up and just sort of polished a little bit. The graphics have been improved. The roster is the same. But I believe Geese Howard is not a boss in 2002, if I remember correctly, but he is a boss in this one. It's your simple 3 versus 3 fighting game. There's no extras like the strikers or anything like that. They removed that component. Very, very simple, very enjoyable. It's classic King of Fighters. I believe this was ported to the PlayStation 2. If I'm not mistaken, and I think they had some additional characters as well. I think there were some improvements on the home console versions. I'm not sure if it got an Xbox release. I don't think it did. So this is the last game before the top 5. It's probably controversial as well. It's Dolphin Blue. As much as I absolutely adore this game, it just doesn't quite make my top 5, unfortunately. It's just got too many issues, unfortunately. If those issues were actually addressed, it would have been an absolutely amazing game. It would have definitely made my top 1 on this system, but it hasn't, unfortunately. So this game got a lot of attention recently with the porting to the Dreamcast, and rightly so. It's a fantastic game. But I'm very surprised it wasn't done sooner, because we've been able to net boot this game onto the Naomi for a very long time now. So I'm surprised it hasn't been available on the Dreamcast much earlier. But I'm no expert. Maybe there's some fundamental issues that prevented them from porting it earlier. As you can see, the game is an absolute stunner. And to be honest with you, the fun matches its looks. It's a fantastic game, but unfortunately it has just too much slowdown. At times it just grinds to a halt, and it just brings you out of the whole immersion of the game. It's really unfortunate. Now, I haven't played the port to the Dreamcast, and I've only seen a little bit of the footage, so I have no idea how big the slowdown is on that system. I presume it's going to be identical. I'm not sure if they could even address it, but if they did, fantastic. Really fantastic stuff, because then it'd be far superior than this version. Don't get me wrong, this game is an absolute must to play, especially if you love the Metal Slug series. But like I say, unfortunately it has a lot of faults with the slowdown, and it's also a coin muncher as well, so it is quite tough. You will die a lot. It's designed to kill you, so you can put more coins into it. So now we're down to the business end of the list, and it's the top 5. So in no particular order, the first coming up is King of Fighters 11. I have no idea why I enjoy this one so much. I kind of enjoy the graphics, the design of it. It is different from the other King of Fighters. You know, the actual colouring, the sort of more pastel sort of colours, and the cartoony sort of look. I kind of like it. I don't know why. I know a lot of people probably hate that. I like the rosters. It does remind me of Mark of the Wolves, especially because Terry Bogard has that sort of design. And yeah, you got Gatto in there as well. But May is nowhere to be seen. That is, for me, that it would have been perfect if it was May wasn't there. Apparently she is in the PlayStation 2 version, so they've got the benefit of that, but unfortunately she is not in the arcade version. Don't get me wrong, it's not my favourite in the series. That still goes to King of Fighters 98 UM, but there's something about it. I just enjoy this game. I can't quite put my finger on it. It just feels good when you're playing it. I'm no expert on the King of Fighters series. I couldn't tell you the fine details between every single iteration of the game. I'm no expert. I'm not fighting in the tournaments. Maybe this game just appeals more to the beginner, because let's face it, as much as I play these games, that's what I am. It's quite possible that I just have a soft spot for this game because it's one of the early games I got for the AtomisWave. It could be just nostalgia, but I do like this game and I do go back and play it. Next game as well, it doesn't get as much love as it deserves. It's Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. This is another one, I have no idea why I love this one so much. I mean, on paper it should seem fairly obvious, right? You've got all the SNK characters from all the different games stuck into one game in a sort of Royal Rumble style of fighting game. What more do you want, right? Well, also you've got May in there as well. She's not missing in this game, so everything should work on this game. I have no idea why this game doesn't get more love than it does. It is such an amazing game, and it's so different than the other fighters as well. So it's 2 versus 2, but you only need to defeat one person. So you really need to manage your character correctly, and you need to like pin down one of the opponents, right? You need to like victimize one of the opponents and hope that they screw up and don't change up. And like I mentioned, it is like a Royal Rumble. It is a survival game, so you're not guaranteed to get all your health back after you win. You do get the option after you win to get some sort of bonus, and one of the bonuses is you can get some additional health, but you're not going to get it all. And so you need to really manage your 2 characters perfectly to let them heal while the other one is fighting. It's great tactics, and it is so much fun. And I haven't even talked about the roster yet. All your favourites in there. You've got the Metal Slug guys, you've got Samurai Showdown, you've got the Last Blade, the Savage Rain. They're all in there. All your favourites are in there. And even May as well, of course. And all the stages as well. The stages are absolutely riddled with Easter eggs from other games. It's so interesting. It's such a fantastic game. I have no idea why it doesn't get more love. Again, it could be more of a beginner's game. You may have the elite fighters that are not so keen on this game. Maybe it's not great for competitions. But if you want to have a quick game, or if you want to play against your mates, this is the perfect game. Again, this is one of these games where if you pick it up, you can't put it down. Yeah, I was capturing footage for it and I just sunk a couple of hours into it. Such a fantastic game. It did come out on the consoles, I believe PS2. I don't think it came out on the Xbox, but I could be wrong. I did warn you at the beginning of the video that this machine is the spiritual successor to the Neo Geo MVS. Next up is Metal Slug 6. It does look like a SNK monopoly in the top 5, but what can I say? It's Metal Slug, right? It's bound to make my top 5. There's no surprises here. You know exactly what you're going to get with the Metal Slug. The only surprise actually is you've got Clark and Ralph from the Ikari Warriors. That was quite a nice addition to the game. But you know exactly what you're going to get here. You're going to get a lot of fun, a lot of shooting, and a lot of humour. There is no mistaking those timeless, absolutely stunning Metal Slug graphics. You can't beat it, you really can't. You know, it's an old cliche, but it holds true for the Metal Slug series. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Just stick with what you know. Just more of the same. This is exactly what Metal Slug 6 is all about. It's a great game. And it did get released, I think, on the PlayStation 2. And I think also on the PSP, I think. And possibly the DS as well. So there's a lot of places you can play this game. It's not exclusive to the AtomisWave. But it is so much fun if you stick this in your cab and you know, you got a bit of a barbecue, you got a party or something like that. Such a good game to have around. So after this one, there's only 2 slots left and the top 5. And at the beginning of the video, I did mention 5 SNK games. So if you do your maths, you know what's coming next. Yes, you guessed it. It's another SNK game. It's Samurai Showdown 6. Let's face it, I wasn't not going to include Samurai Showdown in the top 5. It would never happen. It's one of my favourite series, even though I probably just said that for the Metal Slug series and the King of Fighters series. I love the Samurai Showdown series. I've told my Samurai Showdown 4 story a million times. I adore this series, absolutely do. This by far is not the greatest in the series, but it's still a really, really strong entry, and with improved graphics and sound and all the rest of it, it had to be in the top 5. It really did. Playability wise, it's extremely similar to Samurai Showdown 5 Special. I do believe there's some additional characters. I think there's 4 characters if I'm not mistaken. And you do get to choose your style at the beginning as well, so you can have styles from previous versions of the game. But this game is such good fun, and again, it's perfect when you've got a barbecue and you stick the AtomisWave on and have a couple of battles against your buddies. Fantastic game. So the last game in the top 5 is one I shared before. It's one of the first games I got. It's a game that sort of grabbed my attention and got me to get the AtomisWave in the first place. It is Fist of the North Star. First up, I've got to warn you, the theme tune to Fist of North Star is extremely addictive. It will stick in your head, guarantee. The same theme tune used in the PS1 version, so it must be across all the games. So this is the second game on the AtomisWave that was developed by Arc System Works, and you know exactly what you're going to get with them. You're going to get a quality fighting game. Now obviously they're behind the Guilty Gear games, not only that, they did Battle Fantasia, the Dolphin Blue games, and also the Persona fighting games they did. They know how to do fighting games. If you know anything about the Guilty Gear games, then you know that the Fist of the North Star franchise is absolutely perfect for Arc System Works. Their over-the-top characters, their excessive blood and gore is absolutely perfect for them. Not only that, the soundtrack, the rocking tunes that they always have in their games is so suitable to this game. It is absolute dream matchup. Well, Arc System Works do sometimes get accused of producing not particularly well-balanced fighting games, but this one I don't really care. Yeah, it's not that well-balanced, some of the characters are a little bit overpowered, but it is so much fun, and the sprites are so big, you feel like you're in a real giant battle. And yeah, there is a little bit of button mashing at times, and you can get defeated by beginners that are just hammering away at the buttons, but it is so much fun. You stick this in the cab, you're guaranteed to have some amazing battles against your mates. It's so much fun. I'm not sure how good it is as a tournament fighter. I presume it's seriously lacking in that department, but it ain't lacking in the fun department by no means. I did double check my facts run earlier on. The game actually did get released in Japan only on the PlayStation 2 in 2007, so probably at that time I could have imported it if I really wanted to, but hey, I was after the proper arcade experience and I got it, so I am well happy about that. So that was the last game on the list in the top 5, and that's the last game I've got for you guys. So I pretty much got most of the games available for the system. Of course there's some prototypes and what have you, but I'm not interested in getting those. I have played them on the NetBoot on the Naomi, so that's a very easy way to play them. And there's a couple that I am missing, like the Guilty Gear 1.5 that I mentioned before, but I'm not fussed about getting that, to be honest with you. If it's ridiculous money, I'm not going to get it. Dirty Pigskin's another one I'm missing. It's like an American football sort of mutant game. Not really fussed about that one. And there's also a clay shooting game. I don't think I've ever seen that one for sale. Again, I'm not fussed. I'm quite happy with what I've got now, and to call it a day really. If I do see these other games for the cheap, which is highly likely, maybe I'll pick them up. But yeah, I'm calling it a day for the AtomisWave, and I'm quite happy at that too. So that was the games. So thank you very much for watching, and congratulations for making it this far. And I hope you enjoyed and maybe got something out of this. I don't know, maybe you knew already about all these AtomisWave games, but I hope at least you enjoyed it. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.